Welcome to the Farmhouse. I'm Stephanie Spiker.
I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
Today on the Farmhouse, in just a few minutes, you're going to be hearing from Annaliese Wegner, a dairy farmer from Wisconsin. But first, we thought we'd give you guys some little highlights of cool things that women in ag are doing that we've been featuring on our website at lancasterfarming.com. So, as of today, when we're recording this in late June, we just found out recently that Elle St. Pierre, a dairy farmer from Wisconsin, just qualified for the 2024 Olympics in Paris. She won the 5,000 meter at the track and field trials in Eugene, Oregon, and her time of 14 minutes, 40.34 seconds, broke a U.S. Olympic team trials record that has stood for 24 years. So this will be her second Olympics. She competed in Tokyo, and we will definitely be watching. We're very excited for Elle, who will be in Paris coming up.
Yeah, we'll cheer her on. Elle also notably likes to talk about how she likes to refuel with chocolate milk and dairy milk. So she is a big champion of dairy still to this day. And aren't we all on this podcast?
Heck yeah.
We also, on the website, have a really interesting profile piece on a female auctioneer. Her name is Orpha Rose Longnecker. She is one of only 40 female auctioneers in the state of Pennsylvania. Her father was an auctioneer, and now Orpha runs a business that specializes in real estate and produce auctions with her husband. And the article is just a really interesting story about how she got into auctioneering and some of the obstacles that she had to overcome, many of which were gender biases. She notes that, quote, "the pitch of my voice rose dramatically as I got louder, and it wasn't very pleasant to hear," which is something that I'm sure a lot of male auctioneers have never had to worry about, what their voice actually sounds like. There's also a great video online of Orpha in action that is worth checking out, and we'll have links to these stories in our show notes for you to go explore. But for now, we are going to get ready to talk to Annaliese. So Annaliese, in addition to being a dairy farmer, she also runs Modern Day Farm Chick, which is her website, and she's also very active on social media. She has over 60,000 followers on Instagram, and she blogs pretty regularly at annaliesewegner.com. She blogs about her own farm life and about agriculture in general. And she also has a podcast of her own called Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls. I can't wait to talk to her. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about her and her very busy life.
Annaliese, welcome to the Farmhouse. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we always start every episode with the same question for everyone, which is, did you always want to work in agriculture?
Ooh, that's a good question. I grew up farming. So I think there was always a part of me that loved it, and I knew I wanted to be involved in agriculture in some way, but I never imagined I'd be where I am today. Initially, I went to school, I majored in ag business because I was like, I want to be involved in ag. That seems like a safe place to start. But I quickly realized ag business is a lot of numbers and a lot of math classes. And I was like, Nope, this isn't right. And so then I tried ag marketing, which was pretty cool. But after some internships, I was like, man, it's not the people I want to be around, it's the cows. And I then ultimately ended up majoring in dairy science. Met my husband in the dairy club, followed him back to his family's farm, and we've just been farming together side by side ever since.
Yeah. And you, I think I saw online, you grew up on a dairy farm, right?
I did.
So it's always been in the blood.
It has. It's just interesting that I followed my husband, and then now we have this whole social media aspect to what I do as well. And who would have thought? Not me.
So can you tell us about your farming operation now?
Yeah, so like I said, I farm with my husband. We are the second generation on this dairy farm. His parents started the farm in 1986. They initially started, I think, with maybe 60 cows and a tie stall barn, but progressively grew to our current size of 600. So his parents are still active on the farm. It's my husband and I, and then we have about 11 employees. And we also have twins, Lane and Sage, who are 6 and farming along with us.
That's awesome. So yeah, you said you milk 600 cows, which is a good amount of cows for sure. And I saw on your website that you guys have a double parallel parlor. So for any of our non-farmers who are listening to this, can you just explain that kind of parlor? And then for our farmer listeners, why is the double parallel parlor the thing that works best for you guys?
Yeah, so a double 8 parallel parlor means we can milk 16 cows at one time. So there's 8 on each side, and then the milkers are down in the middle milking the cows. And then the parallel part of it means the cows walk in straight, but then once they get to kind of like their slot or the milking unit, they turn completely parallel. So their udder is parallel to the person milking. Does that make any sense?
Yes, yes.
So, um, okay. And yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I think every dairy farmer is a little bit different. I actually grew up milking in a herringbone parlor. So the cow and the udder is more at a diagonal. And coming to my husband's farm and trying to figure out how to put a milking unit on parallel was just a whole new world. But I think you can easily adapt to any of them. I don't think one is better than the other. It's just back in whenever we put the parlor in is what my in-laws decided to put in, and it gets the job done.
All right.
Awesome. And so I was, diving into your website before we talked to you because I wanted to learn as much about you as I could. And there was one thing that really stood out to me. You said that, when you went from a full-time farmer to kind of full-time mom and part-time farmer, it made you feel, in your words, lost on the farm, that you've kind of lost your place. So you said you later realized that, you didn't lose your place, it was just evolving. So how were you able to kind of get from that feeling of being lost into like the evolved new role that you had?
Yeah, it was tough because, I had gone from working with my husband side by side, like we were equal partners on the farm. And then suddenly I was in this new role where I'm at home a lot more. Like we had twins. As much as I tried to chore with the twins, it was just difficult. I was not getting anything done. So it was just easier for me to stay at home. And I think I kind of did just suffer and wear crabby pants for a while. And then the world of social media kind of opened up to me. I had been using this skincare line, Rodan and Fields, and I don't know, a friend presented the idea to me to like start selling it, and I was like, sounds cool. Like I want something to make me feel like I'm financially contributing to our household. I want to talk to adults during the day. Like, let's give it a go. And really that introduced me to the whole like world of online sales and network marketing. And not only that, I was introduced to a whole new group of women like outside of my egg industry. Prior to this, I had started sharing online just to help bridge the gap from farm to table. And I think many of us who share online, we find it difficult to reach people outside of our egg industry. And when I started selling skincare, I met so many new people, like people outside of the egg industry. And it was really cool to connect with them and share my farm story with them. And that's what kind of led me to like, I'm still valuable, even though I'm not working on the farm as much as I did. Like I'm bringing something new and different to the table. And actually it feels really good here. And I'm getting to be creative and using a different side of myself that I don't get to use on the farm.
Yeah. I feel like everyone's allowed though to have those, crabby moments where you just kind of wallow in it for a second. And then it's like, okay, move on now. Time to figure it out.
It's a natural part of life, I think.
It was the first year of the twins' life. It was a lot of wallowing.
Yeah, that's allowed.
It's tough. Having had, I have 2 kids, and having been through, baby, toddler, young childhood, I cannot imagine what it's like to have 2 at the same time, because I know that like when both of my kids have been in the baby phase and one is still in the toddler phase, it does feel at times like that is all you are doing when you are at home, because they pull so much attention. They need that attention. It's hard enough sometimes to cook dinner, let alone do actual farm chores.
Yeah, go out and milk the cows.
And that kind of brings me to what I wanted to ask you next. On your website, you write of the female farming community that they, quote, are women like me who are busy raising kids on the farm, cooking, pursuing their passions, and maintaining a sense of self. My community has helped me feel connected when farm life has me isolated. And I really like that you included a bit about maintaining a sense of self, because I feel like that is so hard to do. And it only gets harder the busier you get, because all of a sudden you find yourself kind of slotting yourself into these roles like mom, coworker, whatever. And it's just not like reflective of being a whole person. So what do you do, or what do you mentally tell yourself to maintain that sense of self as you're going about your, no doubt, very busy life?
Yeah. Oh, this is another tough question. But I mean, I totally agree. I think it's so easy for women, and especially women in agriculture, to fall into these different roles and start doing things we think we have to do for our family or for our farm or for agriculture or whatever industry you're in, but not necessarily things we want to do or things that bring us joy. And so in the last probably year and a half, I've been into journaling. I've tried to really sit down with myself. And before I say yes to something, I'm like, is this going to bring me joy? Is it going to allow me to serve other people? Is it what's meant for me? Does it belong on my plate? And if it's like a no, then I just have to say no. And I know, like, being in agriculture, like, there's certain things, we sometimes just have to do. But I think if you can really come to terms with like what you're good at and figuring out where you belong in your place on the farm or within your family, like, you're going to be so much happier for it, and everything's just going to click along around you more efficiently as well. Like, it's just going to work better when you're doing what you're meant to do. It just takes a while to figure it out.
Yeah. You saying that women in ag tend to really fall into these roles, it actually reminded me, I forget unfortunately who we were talking to, where we came to a point in the conversation where I think she said the phrase transitioning from a farmer's wife to a farmer. And we kind of went back and forth, what does that mean? Because you can be married to a farmer, but if you are out there working side by side with that farmer, well, aren't you a farmer too? And at that point, and what is the difference between being a farmer's wife and a farmer? Where does that line get drawn? I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I think it's a touchy subject. I'm always worried I'm going to get canceled for saying my opinion on this, but I've always hated the term farmer's wife because to me, it just sounds like you're the farmer's wife. That's it. But I know there's a lot of other people, especially on social media, that are trying to change what that term means. And it means something completely different to them. And that's great. But to me, like, I'd rather just be, me and my husband, we're both farmers, right? Like, that's how I prefer it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you too. That if you're working too, so you deserve the title as well. You're also a farmer. So going back to the quote that I just read back to you, you mentioned that farm life can be isolating, and you attribute the community that you've managed to build online to helping you overcome that sense of isolation. And I was just wondering if you could speak more on that. And is it something that you think that other women are dealing with on their farms?
Yeah. I mean, I think it all stems, again, back to when the kids were babies and you're wanting someone to talk to and talk to somebody who gets it. And I think social media, I have a love-hate relationship with it because it can, it's a lot of screen time, a lot of shenanigans over there. But also, I've met so many amazing people because of that app. And some that are many friends that I've met in real life and friends that I've had conversations with, and they've gotten me through tough times because they get what I'm going through. And when you live in a rural area, you don't get that same contact or those same kind of friends. So I'm very thankful for the community I've built, the friends I've made. I've actually since then started hosting in-person events, and we've gotten to meet each other in real life. And I think people need that too, Yeah.
I feel like, as great as it is that we can connect online, I feel like just nothing beats face-to-face interaction.
Absolutely. I also love that you describe social media as shenanigans because in addition to this podcast and being a reporter here, I run our social media, and that is pretty much the perfect way to describe what's happening at all times.
One word can say so much.
So I saw on your website that you kind of really started your advocacy journey by actually just sharing some articles with your grandmother about farming. and then kind of realizing like, oh, I could just write my own and share my own story. So how has that journey kind of changed and evolved over the years since you started like sharing your farm story online?
Yeah, I started sharing probably over 11 years ago, and I started with a blog. And like you mentioned, it was from sharing stories with my grandma and then kind of realizing, well, like maybe more people want to hear about this. And if they don't, well, at least I'm keeping my grandma in the loop. And so I got started with that. And then I was sharing my blog posts like on my personal Facebook page. And I was like, well, I don't want to bombard all my high school friends with my blog. So then I started like a Facebook page for Modern Day Farm Chick. And then there was Instagram, Snapchat. Now I'm speaking. I have a podcast. Like it's really just trickled into so many different things, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the fact that like I had the bravery, I guess, to get started, to start something and stick with it, because it's turned into much more than I ever imagined.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when you first started, was there even a part of you that was like, oh, this could become like a big thing? Or were you just kind of doing it to do it?
Doing it to do it.
Yeah.
I genuinely, I mean, at my core, still today, the reason I do it is because I want to share my farm life with people and I want to help bridge the gap from farm to table. But if we're being honest, it's pretty cool that I make money doing it now.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. So you just mentioned that you have a podcast of your own, Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, which I love that title. It makes me smile every time I read it. Can you tell us about your podcast and why did you decide to name it that?
Yeah, so I started the podcast with a friend who I met online. Had it not been for social media, we never would have met. And she came to one of my in-person events and we had a good time. And then I jokingly said on my Instagram stories once, like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And she DM'd me and she's like, if you do, I'm going to be your co-host. And I was like, that's a great idea. We should do that. And so we just like started talking more about it. And we wanted like I feel like there's a lot of egg women podcasts out there, but not the vibe that me and Courtney, my co-host, wanted. Like we wanted more podcasts that just really make you laugh and aren't too serious. And me and Courtney are not serious people by any means. And so that's exactly what the podcast is, mostly just for fun. But I hope at the end of it, like there's a little nugget of information that goes home with you. And in general, you just feel like you're not alone. Like our whole message is we are not perfect. We are not the best at what we do. Nobody is. It's okay to just be okay. You're doing great. And that's kind of what we've been trying to bring to the table with our podcast.
I love that. That leads so perfectly into my next question for you. We've talked already about how rural life can feel isolating and how it can make you feel like kind of you're the only one who doesn't have things, together or figured out. And I feel like social media has just taken that to the next level with everybody having their perfectly curated lives online. So obviously it's important to you with your podcast, with your social media channels to kind of keep things real. So, why is that so important to you? And how do you kind of, as you've grown and following, keep it that it's just your real life that you're sharing?
Yeah, I think being real and being yourself is the best way to connect with people. No matter what industry you're in or whatever you're trying to sell, or if you're promoting agriculture, like I've always said, the best way to promote what you do is by not talking about it. Like talking about all the other things in your life that make you you, because that's how you're going to find common ground with someone and connect with them. And then when you do talk about agriculture or talk about a product you're selling, they're going to be much more apt to hear what you have to say and want to buy it from you because they feel like they know you. They've connected with you on something else. And that's why I've always just tried to keep it real, show the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things, because that's relatable.
I do feel like the pendulum might be starting to swing back in the opposite direction, that there is like a bit of a backlash coming against that like highly curated aesthetic where everything is perfect. I feel like enough people have had enough.
Yeah.
That's like, well, guess what? I'm going to show you my life, warts and all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I much prefer that.
I mean, honestly, who wants to scroll through Instagram and just see like absolutely perfect photos of people all the time? Like, what are you actually doing with your life? Like, I want to actually know what's going on with you, not with your curated feed. So I hope the pendulum is swinging back, because
I do too.
I'm all in favor for realness.
Even, I mean, because Instagram stories, I think, are supposed to be the raw, the real, and some people's stories are too curated. I'm like, I want to see your dirty kitchen floors. I want to
Right.
see you in the morning. Like, let me behind the scenes. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, yes. I feel like nowadays there are so many videos and someone's in their house just talking or cooking or whatever, and their house is flawless. And I'm like, there's no way it's always like that. I'm
Right.
like, if I'm doing, we sometimes do like cooking recipe videos because we get reader submitted recipes. And there's a good chance that if you look in the background of my video, you will see like dishes in the sink. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? This is what my house actually looks like, people. Sorry.
Yep.
Your kitchen does look pretty clean in those videos.
I
don't
do
think you have
tidy
anything
it.
to be
I do
worried
tidy it up.
about.
I don't just leave it absolutely like in shambles. I do tidy it a little bit.
Shove all the other stuff to one side, out
Yeah.
of sight, out of
Yeah,
mind.
put it in a corner. It's not in frame. Move on.
Yeah.
All right. So can you tell us about so is it Farm plus Grow, the retreat, or is it Farm and Grow? How
Farm
do
and
we say
Grow.
it? Farm and Grow retreat.
Farm and
What
Grow.
can women who attend expect, and what do you hope they'll take away from it?
Yeah, so Farm and Grow, I just did a retreat for the first time this last spring, but I've also done in-person masterminds and virtual masterminds, and all of them are really trying to help women in agriculture find their uniqueness. Kind of what we talked about before, like figuring out what you're meant to do and what you need to say no to, and doing what makes you happy and finding, like I said, that unique role you have in this world. And they're just a lot of fun. The first retreat went really well. It was really cool. I got a lot of good feedback, but still TBD if I'm going to do it again.
Okay.
I'm a fast-paced, I don't know. Like I do something and then I'm on to the next thing. And so we'll see.
So, I know obviously you are sharing your story, but you also encourage other people, especially women in ag, to share their stories as well. So what are some of your go-to tips for people who want to do more with sharing their farming stories online and on social media?
Mm. I mean, first of all, I want everyone to know you don't have to be on social media to make an impact or to share your story. There are so many ways to make a difference. And one of the ways is online. One of the ways is speaking, but you could also, be involved in your community, serve on a town board, work with the youth. Maybe you like cooking, maybe you like reading. Like there's just so many diverse things you can do to connect with people and bring what you have to them. And yeah, so I think it's just figuring out what works for you, how you want to share your story, and then just letting your uniqueness, your true self shine through and just get started. Like I think that's the hardest part is people are so scared to put themselves out there. They get that imposter syndrome and, oh, what are people going to think? Are people going to judge me? Somebody else is already doing this thing and they're doing a better job than I could do anyways. What's the point? And I always try to remind people like you're not going to change the world. Like that's something I've come to terms with throughout my advocacy journey is I'm not going to change the world. But what if I could change the world for one person? And what if that trickled on to more and more people? Like that is a big deal. And if everyone had that mentality, you'd make change.
Absolutely. I do feel like it is just hard and kind of scary to take that first step and do something maybe a little out of your comfort zone. But something our one producer, Eric, likes to say, which it makes me laugh. And I'm like, yeah, he'll say, sometimes you gotta just take off while you're still building the plane. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes you do. Sometimes it's like, you know what? Get it in the air and see what happens.
Yeah.
So,
because it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to feel completely ready. Like you just got to figure it out as you go.
yeah.
I think there's also something too about like having to get past the uncomfortable feeling about putting yourself out there.
Oh, yeah.
Because, especially in your case, Annaliese, the stories you're telling are very personal stories. They're about your life. So being willing to be out there where everyone can see what's going on, people could potentially judge you. That is something that you need to kind of like step past. And that can be a big step for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I'm one of those people that at least it feels like I probably share more than I should. And some people I think get scared of that. They think they have to put it all out there. But if you take the time to look at certain accounts, I think you can share a lot and be relatable without sharing it all. Like I know various people who don't ever show their kids' faces, but you know she's got like 3 kids because she'll always show the back of their heads or show them in some fashion, but she's really not sharing everything. It's, there's different ways to do it.
All right. So what does being a woman in ag mean to you?
Ooh, being a woman in ag, it is the coolest. I am a 5th generation farmer, so I think back to, my grandma and my great grandmas who I had the opportunity to farm with and learn from as a kid. And my grandmas are still alive, but like my great grandmas, they were the hardest working ladies I knew, and they did it all. And so it's really cool that I got to learn from them, and I've got to kind of take what I've learned from them to pave my own way and do new things. And I think and I hope they would be proud. But yeah, I think being a woman in agriculture is really special.
Awesome. Yeah. So that is going to wrap things up for us. Do you want to, before you go, let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, I am Mod Farm Chick on Instagram, Modern Day Farm Chick on Facebook. My website is AnnaliseWegner.com, and the podcast is Eggs Most Okayest Farm Girls.
Awesome. We'll put some links in the show notes so that people can find you on your various platforms. But Annaliese, thank you so much for stopping by the farmhouse today. We really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
That was a really fun conversation with Annaliese. You can tell that she is a podcaster herself because I feel like she was just so easy to talk to, and I just loved hearing all about her very busy life as a mom and a dairy farmer and a social media person and a podcaster, and oh my gosh, I would be exhausted if I had to do all of those things.
I was exhausted just hearing about them. It was great to hear what she had to say. I really enjoyed hearing her talk about putting her life out there, putting herself out there in order to try to, move the needle a little bit on how people perceive agriculture and what that really, really takes.
Yeah, and I feel like, she just kind of went for it. She was like, you know what? I could share my story. Let's just do it. And good things have happened. And honestly, I feel like you and I kind of related to that a little bit with this Farmhouse podcast, where neither of us have ever done a podcast before, and it was just like, you know what, I think Lancaster Farming needs a Women in Ag podcast. Let's just go for it. And
here we are.
Absolutely loved getting to talk to so many amazing women in ag. It's really been very cool. So I'm glad that we took the leap, and I'm glad that she took the leap because my gosh, she's done so many very cool things since she started sharing her story.
Yeah, and I also appreciate that she said, you don't have to be online to do this sort of thing. You don't have to be on social media. There are so many other opportunities to share your story, to advocate. It makes me think of when we interviewed our coworker Taylor, who likes to advocate when she has clients in her salon chair, because Taylor, in addition to working for Lancaster Farming, she also is a hairstylist. And so she's got a captive audience, and she gets to tell them all about ag.
And while that's like, she's only talking to one person at a time, but like Annaliese was saying, you're not going to change the whole world, but if you can talk to one single person and maybe teach them something or show them something they didn't know about the industry, I mean, that could change their view on the industry, and maybe they'll tell someone what they learned, and you never know. Yeah, yep. That one little seed that you're planting could grow a whole tree. Or
That's beautiful.
A whole cornfield. Let's get a little more ag in there.
I love that. All right, that wraps things up for us. Thank you all for listening. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And if you really like this episode, please consider leaving us a review.
If you have any questions or thoughts about this episode or our podcast in general, you can email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com.
You can also find us on social media at Lancaster Farming on most platforms.
Thank you again for visiting us at the farmhouse. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Candace.
And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Wierzbowski. It was produced by Eric Herlock and Matt Lee. The music you've heard throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.